All right. We are back with Missed on Points. I'm Joe. You gonna say something, Eric? You're just gonna leave me hanging. Well, I'm hanging out by the pool. Eric is actually also by the pool. It's just a pool of his own misery and hatred for the Falcons and hatred for himself for being a Falcons fan. So we're going to talk about the draft today. And
Can I just,
yeah,
can I have a live shot? Can I share my screen with you, Joe?
yeah, absolutely.
A live shot of the bar I was in when the Falcons announced their pick. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, let's see here. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Let's do this. I like it. I enjoy it.
That's not an inaccurate description of what occurred last night at the Hooters over by Campbellton. That's right.
Hooters by Campbellton. Could you be any more stereotypical?
No. There were plenty of people there that were sharing in my stereotypes. There's actually a live video of me and my reaction to the Falcons pick.
Really?
If you follow me or you are listening or you're a friend of mine, my dear friend Sam recorded my reaction. And my reaction went exactly like this. Here's an instant replay. You ready?
Yep.
All right, say the player's name.
What's his last name?
Neil.
Okay, I keep wanting to call him Reeves. And with the 17th pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Keanu Neal. You have to say something. You have to say something, too. Your picture's not on the screen. No one just saw you walk away from the chair.
I'm out. Yeah, that was it. So there's an agenda. I'm going to keep it together. I know Neil Blackman think this is the greatest human being that has ever walked the earth.
It's true, and we'll talk about Neil Blackman in just a second, but I wanted to kind of preface this. I wanted to preface this with a couple of pieces, a couple of quick statistics. I was doing some research.
Safety.
No, stop.
Okay.
Stop.
Right.
So I was doing a little research on the draft this morning, and I found a really interesting article by the Washington Post that was a pre-draft analysis of the Atlanta Falcons, and part of that analysis was that the Post had us ranked for the last 20 years as the 19th best team in the NFL at drafting, which tells you, I think it's a bit generous, but it tells you, we've had some good points and bad points, but it tells you that the Falcons are not well known for their draft quality. And then I noticed one other thing, which I actually noticed right when we picked Keanu last night, and that is that he's not in the Scouts Incorporated top 32 players. So with that, I would just want to give you the floor, Eric, to talk about why you think this is not a good pick.
So I have a few other stats that I want to share, and this is important. And for those of you who think that I don't know sports, because I know there's a lot of you, and there's a lot of people out there that think that I don't know anything about this player, let me tell you why I dislike the pick. It is not the player per se. It is where we picked him and who we passed over. Some people think that this is about Miles Jack, and I love Jack. Can you hear me okay, or do I need to put in headphones?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. And I love Miles Jack, and I understand that like every team passed on him, but I like transcendent talent. He's a transcendent talent. 6 carries, 122 yards, I think against Arizona, when his first ever time playing running back, I think in his life. We talk about the need, Todd Gurley, but I want to preface this way, okay? During the draft live, there's also video evidence of this. I correctly predicted every draft pick with the exception of 2. Joey Bosa going to the Chargers, which I think no one really saw coming, and this pick, which means that even in the draft randomness, I was able to still correctly identify why the Bears jumped up to take Floyd. Why did the Cowboys take a running back who I didn't think wasn't as good as Todd Gurley, so therefore didn't deserve to be the 4th pick by the Cowboys, who have other needs. I predicted that Tampa would take Hargraves. So I know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Can I interrupt you really quickly? I have a quick question.
Sure.
Did you pick the San Francisco pick too? The one that like is universally been reviled by everyone else who's analyzing the draft?
Guard, yes.
Wow, that's impressive. Because I don't think anyone saw that coming because they took a guard in free agency.
I'll tell you exactly how I did it. When for example, the 49ers made their pick, my assumption was that they were moving up to take a guard or a tackle, some sort of offensive lineman. I'll be honest, I didn't get the name of the player because I think I said someone else. Or I thought they were going to take, I think Paxton Lynch may have been still available. I can't remember. But I was like, they're moving up to get an offensive lineman because they need someone to protect Kaepernick.
Yeah.
So I knew why they did it. Did I get that name wrong? Yes, sure. Got the name wrong, got the player right, got the desire or the reason for it correct.
No, that's good. That's impressive. No, continue though.
So, and here's the second thing. It's not like I don't know who this player is. A lot of people are like, well, you haven't seen him play. I have. I live in the SEC country. I've seen enough SEC games. This is a guy who Falcons beat reporters have been talking about as a possible target because we may trade down and still get this guy. Okay. So he had 94, 93 tackles his senior year, which you would think is impressive, right? Right. 53 of those are assisted tackles. I remember Ray Lewis one time saying, always be skeptical of players who inflate their tackle numbers because they jump on the pile at the end to get the assist. Okay. At the combine, he ran a 4.62. To put that in perspective, Darren Lee is the equivalent size of him and is 20 pounds heavier, ran a 4.47. Now, some people are like, this is about Miles Jack. It's not about Miles Jack. It's about the fact that we could have also taken Lee, who I thought would have been fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me interrupt you again for just a second because I know the Miles Jack thing was present, and since all the teams passed on him, that's probably something we don't need to talk about that much. But I was just looking at the players that were still available when we drafted Keanu, and the two names that really stood out were Shaq Lawson and Duran or Darren Lee, however he pronounces his first name. The reason that I'm not hateful of this pick, and we'll talk a little bit more in a second. I want you to address a couple of issues, but it did seem to me like we have a serious need for pass rushers, which we've had for a long time. And both of those guys are pass rushers, albeit from different parts of the backfield. But what are your thoughts on that? Would you have rather seen Shaq Lawson or Darren Lee, or what's your?
I would prefer Lee only because I thought we spent a lot of money this free agency on guys that kind of play the 4-3 kind of position. Yeah. So I thought like Lawson was kind of redundancy. I wouldn't have been mad, but I also wouldn't have. If you take Lawson, I would have preferred Kandichi because I think he's a better player, even though he's got his issues. And him going to Arizona makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny. Our mutual friend Nick Shulo actually texted me just before we started this to say that he thought Kandichi was the steal of the draft and is going to blow up Arizona.
Yeah, he's an elite talent. He ran I think a 4.8, 5.7 maybe, which isn't that much slower than the safety we just drafted, by the way. So no, those players would have been fine. This isn't a I wish we had Jack argument. This is a we reach for a need argument.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, and I understand people. James Herndon made the quote. Love James Herndon made the quote that we tried to trade down and we couldn't. And I want to address this very quickly. I understand you need a partner to trade down, okay? But trading down would not have made me feel any better about this pick unless we would have gotten an extra 2 or something really nice for that trade down. You notice that a lot of people that traded down, what did they get? An extra 4, an extra 6. They didn't get like these massive kind of packages you think to trade down, with the exception of the 49ers jumping up to get the guard. So this wasn't it's not a question of it's not a question of trading down. It's just that we reached for a need for a guy. Now I did hear this report that he would not have made it past the Jets at 20. But that could either be a smokescreen by the Falcons, who are like, if we didn't take him, we weren't going to get him in the second, which kind of like would have answered a lot of my concerns, right? But even if that's the case, he's not better than Duran or Darren Lee.
Yeah,
he just isn't.
It's interesting. Dimitrov actually said in the press conference last night that we did get offers.
Hold on,
To trade him.
can I channel my inner Kevin Durant?
Yeah.
He's an idiot.
I actually kind of agree with you. I think that I cannot believe that Dimitrov still has his job. I'm not. It's hard to sort of, other than Julio Jones, it's hard to identify a really great pick that he's made. And
wait, here's a question. I hate to go off on tangent. I want to ask you this because when I heard this, I thought it was insane. There was the best Falcons draft, I guess, was, they said, the Michael Vick draft. Did you agree with that?
Actually, no. I thought the 2008 draft was pretty sweet. That's the Matt Ryan draft. I
was going to say Julio because it's Julio, but that's fine. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Julio, and you can't argue with the results of him as a wide receiver. So I'm not really complaining. I'm just saying that if you want to make an argument about the Julio draft, it's how much we gave up to get him, which was pretty epic. Now, the best counter argument to that, to me, is it's Dimitrov. What else was he going to do with those picks? And he came. You have to remember, he came to us from New England. And part of the argument for him as a general manager and as a drafter was that New England was so good at stockpiling these picks lower in the draft and then really nailing those picks and picking up great players. And that just hasn't happened. No. And he hasn't proven to be a great, and his free agency record is atrocious. It's embarrassing to the point that
it's epically worse in a short period of time. Yeah. There was a moment where it was like he made all the right moves. Gonzalez, I'm being objective, getting Matt Ryan. The 2008 draft had a couple of great pieces. You got Trufant,
yep.
Right? No one kind of thought that Trufant was going to be the guy. Like, he got a couple of there was parts where he was like nailing it, and then all of a sudden it was like the bottom fell out. Not really sure why, but maybe he needs to eat some meat. I don't know, but the bottom fell out.
Until last year, we had done, the worst part about it was we hadn't drafted anyone in the high rounds on the offensive or defensive lines until last year. And then I think our previous pick in that world was Parade Jerry. So good luck finding him.
He retired, but I was going to say Sam Baker. But yeah.
I mean, they drafted Baker in the Ryan draft, which is part of what made it good. And Sam Baker's been okay, but let's not fool ourselves and think that he's been fantastic, especially given what we did with him.
If you draft a franchise quarterback, you better get him a left tackle.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, I haven't done the work and gone back and looked at the other offensive linemen who were available in that draft instead of Baker. But whatever. So interesting thing, Dimitrov said we did get offers, which I think is interesting, but we didn't think any of them were good enough, and that may be true. The argument that I've heard from most of the analysis that gives us the most common grade you'll see of this pick is a B, and almost everyone says that is a B.
What grade was it?
A B. I've seen that about 6 different publications.
I've seen a B minus is the highest. Pro Football Talk gave us a D.
But I think they're isolated. I did see a C plus. On one of the posts, but most of the mainstream draft ranking gave us a B or a B minus, and all of their reasoning is that we reached for the player. And I saw a pretty good analysis that said that Quinn had really focused in on Keanu because he actually, this is something I haven't seen reported a lot. Quinn recruited Keanu.
He recruited him before he left for Seattle.
He recruited him, and so that's one thing, but let me get your reaction to a couple of specific. I do think we reached. I do think that they were zeroed in on him, and they didn't react necessarily well to what was going on earlier in the draft. Either that, or they just didn't care, and this was their player, and that was it.
Which I think is true. I think that part is true.
And I have a real problem with that, given the sheer number of needs that we have on the defense. So the argument I've heard that in response to that is that a lot of the good defensive players are being pushed back further down into the draft. And so I'll talk about what my grade of this is in just a second. But here's the couple of things that I want you to talk about. One of them is there's a lot of reporting, and in fact, Dan Quinn himself even said this in the press conference last night, that this kid's going to play linebacker in addition to strong safety. Does that change in any way your analysis of this pick?
Let me get this straight. Well, okay. Here's the thing. And I want to look this up because I had this and I lost it. So everyone said that this kid is going to be Cam Chancellor.
That is you hear that in almost every analysis of this pick.
Okay. Let me tell you the specs on Cam Chancellor. Ready?
Yep.
6'3", 232 pounds. runs an equivalent 40 as this guy that we drafted, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, Cam Chancellor's great, but one of the reasons he's great is because of how freakishly huge he is, okay? Let me see if I can find, what's the guy's name again? Keanu
Neal. What's his height? I don't know off the top of my head.
Sure, no, I got you. I got it right here. Ready?
Yep.
6 feet even.
So he's my height.
211. Now,
yeah, that's less than I weigh. I just like to point that.
Good job, Joe.
Thank you.
Hard-hitting analysis. So here's what he doesn't have that Cam has. 3 inches, longer arms, leaner frame, equivalent speed. All right? He's not Cam Chancellor. Now, if he plays weak side linebacker, you need to explain to me. Like, let's take Miles Jack out of the conversation.
Right. You
need to explain to me why Darren Lee wasn't the pick. Now, some of you are saying, maybe saying right now, oh, he played at Florida, Neil Blackman. I'm just gonna talk about Darren Lee's sheer physical numbers. Okay. Now, Darren Lee graded higher, ran a 4.47. Joe, is that faster than 4.6?
It is faster than 4.6 by a bit.
Okay. Remember the numbers I gave you on Cam Chancellor. 6 feet, 1, 232 pounds. I believe he has a 3-inch arm length advantage, which means each one of his arms are 3 inches longer. Well, an inch and a half longer.
Let me interrupt your love letter to Darren Lee and say goodbye to my wife because she's about to leave for the weekend, for part of the weekend to take Zoe.
Bye.
Mwah.
Bye.
Have a good time.
Hi, Eric.
Someday Eric will come to our house maybe, and he can like hang out by the pool. But I'm not holding my breath.
No, I'm always afraid.
I'm inviting you again.
I promise I will shout. I promise.
All right.
So then I don't understand the so here's the thing that makes zero sense now. If what you said is true, and everyone who bombarded me last night was like, "Oh, we had a need at strong safety," well, that means we just drafted a weak side linebacker.
Well, I actually think I think it's both better and worse than what you're saying, because to me it's not. You're right. We had a need at safety, but we had so many other needs. And to me, if you watch the Falcons consistently over the last 4 or 5 years, what we do not have is a penetrating rusher. And the problem is that Keanu Neal is not. I know. Sorry about that. Shout out to Nick Shula. But we can't. Keanu Neal is not a rusher at all. He's a run stopper. And in fact, I think that if you listen to what the Falcons regime is saying about this, and I'm not saying you have to be happy about it, but I believe them when they say that they want him to be a run stopper. Quinn likes his strong safeties. Everyone agrees to play much closer to the line of scrimmage and to be a run supporter. And we were an atrocious running defensive team last year. And actually, we have been a really bad run stopping team for a long time. Even on the year that we were really good and we got near the Super Bowl, that team was deceptively bad at run stopping. I don't know that we've had a good Falcons run stopping defense since Dan Reeves left. Not saying anything great about Dan Reeves, but I think to think that Keanu Neal is going to play outside linebacker and be the same kind of player that Darron Lee would have been at outside linebacker is really a mistake, both because you're right, they're physically different, but Darron Lee's also a pass rusher. He's an edge rusher, which is something that we haven't had for a while. And Keanu Neal just isn't that's not what he does.
I actually thought that our run defense wasn't. So here's why I kind of disagree with you a little bit in terms of what I saw that I thought was problematic about the Falcons. The part that I thought was problematic about the Falcons wasn't necessarily the run defense per se, but the problem that I had with the Falcons was it seemed like underneath coverage, in terms of covering the middle of the field was atrocious.
It has been for a while.
It has been for a while, and I think that can help you be a better pass rushing team if quarterbacks don't have to constantly oh look, there's someone right open 8 to 10 yards down the field.
Yep.
A little bit better coverage down there. Now the Falcons last year were 14th against the run, giving up a little over 100 yards, 105 yards a game. Okay, which is fine. But they were better than Jacksonville, Buffalo, Tennessee, Green Bay. Who's the best?
I haven't looked at the end of the year statistics, but I'll tell you what I think is the problem with those statistics is that because this was true about halfway through the season that we were fine if you looked at overall D, but deceptively fine because at the run because we gave up lots of big plays with the run, and we were better at getting off the field at third down, but it's hard to get worse than we were before that. So
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I don't think we were like atrocious.
No, you don't have to persuade me. I feel like the number one need for us as a team going into this draft was pressuring the quarterback, and we drafted a player who does not do that.
That I thought was important. If the goal of the team this draft was to get faster, taking Neal makes no sense, which is what you heard the entire pre-draft process. Am I right? All we heard was we want to get faster. And we took a guy who's not fast, which it boggles my mind.
No, but he is, and this is the interesting thing. You know, I've read a bunch of stuff on this so far, and it's really interesting to watch the arguments work. And the people that defend this pick very strongly, who think it's a great pick, they'll say a couple of things that I think are interesting. One of them is they'll compare Travis Neal to Deron Lee directly and say that the reason we took Neal instead of Lee is that Neal is a more physical player and Lee is not, which I find odd but I haven't watched a lot of Deron Lee, so I wouldn't necessarily know whether he was that physical of a player. But I've heard people say, well, these are essentially the same player, except that Neal is more physical.
Neal, you can be physical all you want to. Neal misses too many tackles. If you watch the Bama game, there's tons of tackles he missed. LSU game, same plays. He's always out of position because he wants to make the big hit. Deron, however you pronounce his name, Lee, I think it's more polished. Here's the funny part about it. Most Florida fans wished Urban Meyer never left. Who coached Lee at Ohio State? Meyer, right? So I would rather have the player. And by the way, Lee was phenomenal, I think, in the national championship game, like a stud. So it doesn't like Neal could be good, like right? Like this guy could be pretty good. But the question is the difference between him and the guys like you've just named that we passed up, who I just thought were better players, but shown more in college.
Here's my other question for you, because this is the other argument, and I think this is not even an argument so much as an observation. I think it's true that Quinn is trying to follow the Seattle blueprint to a certain degree. Not only in the sense of like drafting a Cam Chancellor, and by the way, like you're right about all the physical statistics, but the thing that people say when they compare Neal to Cam Chancellor is how smart he is and how he can be, a defensive quarterback or a defensive coordinator on the field. We'll see how that works out. But I think there's no question that Quinn is trying to recreate what he was doing in Seattle here in Atlanta. And, Seattle had a lot of success with that. And it is, to a certain extent, a system, right? They play cover 3. They do a lot of things that are different. It really requires you to have a fantastic weak safety. But it seems to be what he's doing. And if that's what he's doing, then drafting the guy that's admittedly not as fast, but I hear these weird arguments. Well, he's not as fast, but he covers more ground than people at his speed. To me, that's just an argument that his 40 time wasn't very reflective of his actual game speed, which I'm willing to believe. But sure. I agree with you. Here's what I'll say about this pick before we go completely down the rabbit hole. But I think this pick is a B question mark, and here's why. I think we unquestionably we probably focused on a player as opposed to best of player available. Now, the question is, we gambled, and we gambled that the pass rushing talent that we were going to need was going to be available in the second round. If after the second and third round, we have some good, solid pass rushing options that we've drafted, if any of that talent falls to us, then you'll look back and go, well, that was a gamble, but the gamble paid off. I don't know that at this point you can really evaluate it. I agree with you entirely. I think we picked the wrong player because it didn't quite match our needs, but I don't think it's a disastrous pick. And I'll wait to see what the next couple of picks are to evaluate whether or not I think it was a really bad pick or a good pick. If Dimitrov continues to not draft pass rushers in the next couple of rounds, I will turn heel and slam him and call for his immediate is immediate resignation, because we don't have that, and we haven't had that forever, and I'm sick of it.
So, so is this where we're to give a grade on this pick?
Yeah, I just gave a B question mark, so I gave an illegal grade. But go ahead, I'm the teacher.
Are we allowed to give F minuses? Is that like a real grade?
You can't be serious about that, though. It's not an F minus. It's not an F.
It's a D minus.
That's rough, dude.
Look. Here's why it's a D minus. Okay, I'm just going to name players that are currently available. Okay, I'm going to skip the obvious person. Right. I think.
Yeah, I don't think you can say anything about the Jack non-pick at this point, because it's hard to say that. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Moving on, Jack.
Fair enough.
All right. Ragland, because aren't we tired of who we have at middle linebacker right now? Just
I'm not sure that we're happy with any of our linebacking core.
Okay, moving on. Jaron Reed, who was a defensive tackle from Alabama. Okay, I actually think the Falcons are going to take Hunter Henry if he falls to them in the second round, because they're the Falcons. Here's a safety that's better. Von Bell from Ohio State, better cover skills. But if you're looking for a safety that's an in-the-box safety, then Von Bell's probably not that guy, I guess. Kevin Dodd from Clemson. Correa, outside linebacker. Ashawn Robinson. So the reason that it's a D minus is for the following reasons. It's a reach. You don't reach for need. You will listen to almost any GM expert. I value what's the former Colts GM that's on ESPN, drafted Peyton Manning.
Bill Polian.
Polian was you never draft, you never reach for need. Never. You don't reach for need. We reach for need, and we reach for a guy that is a contradiction to what you told us you would do, which is we need to get faster. We are not faster with this pick.
Yeah. Dude, so, I agree with you on the reach, but we probably only reached on him by like 5 picks.
I don't know.
I know you don't believe the Jets, but there's a couple of teams below that, 22 and 23, that were wanting to pick in that same range. We would have had to trade down only like 4 spots in order to get a decent safety. But I agree with you. That means we focused on need. Like, I can see that argument immediately.
Okay. I don't think he's as look. This is something that I also think is interesting. I'm always skeptical of guys who are quote unquote fast risers in the draft, right? Especially like you heard this from like various sources who are just like, Neil has been a fast riser over the last week.
Nope, that's true too. But I agree with you that I'm skeptical of those.
How does that happen if everything else is complete? You saw him at the combine, you've interviewed him, you've done all these things. How does he all of a sudden become a fast riser?
I think, to be totally honest, though, I think that is not. I think it's a lot like election polls where you see all of a sudden, one of the candidates surges ahead, and I think nothing's actually changing for the most part in those polls. It's just that you're getting slightly different results of what's going on. To me, the fast riser thing isn't anything that's happening with the teams. It's the reporters who are finally getting clued into the fact that a lot more teams like this player than they would have thought.
That's fine. We reached. If what you said is true about him playing at linebacker, then that means that we passed over what I think everyone believes is a universally better player. Which therein lies.
Not everyone, but I agree with you. I think it's a lot of people think that Darren Lee is a better player.
So therein lies my biggest problem. Okay, because then you have to look at it from this standpoint, and this is the argument I made last year about Todd Gurley. All right, everyone loves Devontae Freeman. I love him. I don't want to say overachieved. That's a weird thing to say about an NFL player, but he surprised us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what would our draft have looked like had we taken Gurley and then an equivalent pass rusher in the second round? The difference between Todd Gurley and Devontae Freeman is bigger than the difference between what we got from Beasley and what I think like there were other second round pass rushers did who could do exactly what we thought Beasley could do. And the reason that it is a D minus, this is a historical, the D stands for Dimitrov. The historical analysis, the historical failures of the draft, right? And in a sense of we don't seem to grasp the big picture of wanting to be. Can I say this to you? Name a player that you're afraid of in the Atlanta Falcons defense.
Oh, there is Trufant, maybe.
The fact you had to say maybe.
No, yeah, I mean, he doesn't play a position that you talk about fear.
Is it Beasley?
Dude,
is it
Bierman's nuts. So like,
so the reason that I am upset is because I feel like it would be different if I saw maybe different measurables from Neal and like I saw a different player than on some of these tapes that I saw, but he's not. He's a guy that like wants to do. He doesn't have proper technique when he wants to hit. There's a lot of failure here. Now, he could turn out to be William Moore. Fantastic. We have William Moore, I guess, again. That was good at times and bad at times. So, no, it's a D-. This pick, we reached for a need for a fit, and more importantly, I feel like we were lied to about the fact that we were going to get faster on defense.
Well, the lying thing doesn't bother me as much because I kind of assumed that teams are going to do that anyway. But I'll tell you what does bother me, and I'll kind of go along with you. Although I think D- is way too low. I think the worst you could probably give this pick is a C-.
All right, fine.
But I get you on this. I think if you watch the Dimitrov era, we have been staggeringly stupid about locating and then successfully drafting good defensive front seven guys. And you know, we just there's no example of that for us, and it's a glaring problem with the team on the field, and so when, I think it's a mistake to look at your past and go, well, that means we absolutely have to reach for one of the front seven guys, right? So if we had reached for a linebacker or a defensive line player, I would have been upset. But the problem is we wouldn't have had to reach for those guys. Those guys were right there on the board for us. And what we did was continue to do the same thing that we've done before, which is not understand the importance of the defensive front seven, especially in terms of pressuring the quarterback. If you watch our games last year, when we finally started blitzing a bunch, we were absolutely incompetent. And it's just painful as a Falcons fan to watch this stuff. So fair enough. Let me ask you one more question about the Falcons draft, and then I want to get your quick takes on a couple of other things. My other question for you about the Falcons draft is, I am really worried that in the second round we're going to take a wide receiver.
No,
because Roddy
all the wide receivers that were so. I think that we would have taken Treadwell, maybe one of the three receivers that kind of went after us. Had we maybe not gotten a receiver in free agency, because I think those are all like really, really good, like number two-ish type wide receivers. You would heard the Falcons say that they wouldn't like ignore offense if something kind of came to them. I'm not concerned about the receiver. I think I think we take the tight end from Arkansas, who, sure, I guess.
But yeah, okay, fair enough. Then the point that I was trying to make is, if you watch Dimitrov, he loves to take offensive players, not in the first round necessarily, but he likes to, if he's drafted a defensive player or a line player in the first round, he loves to take an offensive player unexpectedly, either in the second round or the third round, and then crow about what a great pick it was. And if we have an amazing tight end available, if there's like an incredible, astonishing tight end available to us in round two, I'm still not sure that we should take them, because I don't think the offense is the problem so much as the defense is the problem.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh God, what's the offensive coordinator's name?
Is it Shanahan?
Yeah, in Shanahan's offense, he does like the tight end. I think Hunter is a fine tight end,
and we don't have a good tight end right now.
We don't have a good tight end. We have a serviceable one, I suppose.
Yes,
but we could also get a tight end. I think we have a third round pick in the third round, conceivably. But who knows? Let me say this, because I know a lot of people have made this point that we could still get Miles Jack in the second round because he could fall to the 50th pick.
I'll be shocked. Let
me say this. I'm going to concede the stupidity of the link for the impact term. That doesn't mean that I'm not still pissed off at the first pick, because it doesn't solve that problem. You can't go, see, Mathis, we got Miles Jack, because I'm still going to go, but we could have had Lee, right? Because most people think that this is about Miles Jack, and it's not. It's about the reach for a player that's not as good as other players who are on the board, Shaq Lawson, just to name one guy, right? So I don't think that solves the problem per se. But it also means that you have not set the draft for you in a way that means that you could have gotten infinite. Imagine Darren Lee and Miles Jack, or Lawson and Miles Jack. Or what if you would have taken Miles Jack and then you would have been able to get Smith, the Notre Dame linebacker, and then you've got the potential, because that's really what the draft is about, right? The potential for two stud linebackers. Now, they both could fail, but guess what? All first round and second round picks could fail.
Oh, that's true.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't consider greatness in this particular way. So,
look, let me just differ with you a slight bit. I do think there is an argument for why a really great second round defensive pick improves the first round pick, which is basically what I said before, that if the Falcons were correctly analyzing the draft and they were looking at the trends in the early part of the first round, and they said all these great defensive players are going to be pushed downward, which means that we can take a player of need now and then have a bunch of options in the second round that are all still going to fill other needs that we have, then maybe that's an argument. I still agree with you that we picked past the value of that pick, but I'll feel less bad about it because I'll feel like at least they knew what they were doing, and that is a real question to me with this group sometimes.
So here's the funny part about this. I think we both are skeptical of the front office of the Atlanta Falcons from a decision-making standpoint. Can we agree on this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Then to me, I think that would be dumb luck. Right? And I'm not even sure if dumb luck occurs again, that they would do the right thing. Is that fair?
No, well, and that's exactly the question that I was asking you earlier, which is that, the best way to interpret this, in my opinion, is that the Falcons were really wily and they looked at the way the draft was going and they decided that they could get, and the specific argument that's been made is that a bunch of the defensive line guys have been pushed down, and that they could then have a bunch of options at D-line or linebacker in the second round. That's the best interpretation of this pick. But I don't trust them to have that interpretation. I don't trust them. I feel like they haven't proven themselves, so that, like I said, I want to trust them. I want the front office to do well. And so if they pick really well in the second round, even if it's luck, it means they know what the hell they're doing. But what worries me is the possibility that we're going to get into the second round and there will be a couple of great defensive options available for us at that point, and we will pass them over because Dimitroff likes the splashy offensive pick.
See, so here's what I think would happen. We could have the exact same scenario play itself out, and we would take the tight end over those guys, which will make you just go,
yeah, and we have a needed tight end, but it's not nearly this. I mean, Jesus, how many years are you going to not? You're going to not draft a really certain legitimate pass rusher.
I think so.
All right. Well, let me wrap this up because there are a couple of things that I want to get to.
Hold on, I just want to say this. I'm sorry. Scouts Inc. actually has Hunter Henry, the tight end, rated ahead of the guy who we took in the first round. So look at it this way. Had we had taken the tight end in the first round, I probably would have been like, okay. Like, because I at least know he's good. Right? Like, I know he's good. He's a top 32 player consistently by most folks, right? Sure. But and maybe your theory is right? This guy is so here. This is funny. This guy's 6'5", 250, ran a 4.7. That means he's about the same speed as the safety we took. Anyway, that's fine.
All right. Well, let me ask you. Let's shift gears a little bit. I think we're both interested to see what they're going to do in the next couple rounds, but we're both disappointed in them overpaying for or overdrafting for a player that, while we have need at, we have much greater need in other areas. Let me ask you a couple of non-Atlanta Falcons questions. Sure. What do you think about the Tussle thing?
Smoke weed every day.
We need the sounder. Where's smoke weed every day?
My friends Sam and Sheena, who were with me at the bar when we were watching this draft, we thought Tunzel was going to go 6 to Baltimore, and I was like, they're either going to take him or they're going to take the tackle from Notre Dame. They took the tackle from Notre Dame, and Here's what I thought the concern was for him. I thought the concern for him wasn't, because I didn't know about the Twitter thing yet, was everyone was concerned about the fact that he had really small arms for a tackle, which I can understand that being an issue. Like that's, you can't be a T-Rex out there trying to like pass rush. But he only gave up 2 sacks in the SEC West, which I heard was pretty good for defenses. I thought Miami got a steal. Like, I thought this was a steal. I think
potentially.
I honestly think that this is because we heard the rumors about the stepfather having, that being an issue.
Which, by the way, I think that's been really poorly covered by the press. I feel like
what I've heard I guess on Twitter I've seen it a lot, but
no. What I'm saying isn't that they shouldn't have reported it. I'm saying they've reported it poorly. I'm saying that it sounds like the situation there was that he and the stepfather got into an argument, and the stepfather was also arrested. Mm-hmm. And if anyone knows anything about those kind of domestic incidents, you shouldn't just assume from those facts that Tunsil was at fault, that he was doing something wrong. In fact, there's a lot of people who are doing things to protect members of their family from other members of their family who are violent, and they end up getting arrested too because there's a fight, but it doesn't mean the fight was necessarily bad. I'm much more concerned about kind of a string of issues with him. And honestly, like if I were the Dolphins, I'd be worried about the fact that this guy just up and admitted on national television last night that he took money from a coach. Because
your logic though, it's not just about the headline, but if you read the story, he was like, "Yes, I took $305 because
my mom's electricity bill." Yes,
you cut off. Look, if I'm a college football player, I would do the same thing.
Sure, I don't fault the kid.
And if I'm a coach, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not going to let one of my players' parents get their lights cut off. I make millions of dollars. Yep. These kids don't make any money. Their parent, I know he's going pro. He's not coming back. It's I believe around the summertime in Mississippi. It's hot as fuck.
It's hot as hell. People die from lack of air conditioning. P.S.
That to me is the least amount. I am concerned about the transgressions. But the fact that no college football player tested positive means something.
Yep, it does.
And I thought the Dolphins got a steal.
No, look, in terms of talent, I agree with you. And when this thing happened with Twitter and people were saying that was the reason that he slipped, I don't think it was. Now, I've actually started to see some reporting this morning that questions whether the Twitter thing had anything to do with why he slipped.
Yeah, I think that there were medical red flags someone had talked about. That makes sense.
That which does, right? And there's a lot we don't know about what happens in terms of draft scouting. But the only thing that would concern me if I were the Dolphins is that the kid can't keep his mouth shut and is bad at those interactions. Now, they'll have an easier time managing that when he gets in the fold, but he's still a grown man in Miami where there's, I don't worry about him getting into trouble because it's like you said, if you look past the headline, then these situations are not bad. And honestly, I feel like his story with his mom and her electricity is yet another reason why we ought to consider some sort of limited payment plan for college football players. I don't think they should be paid like some of them should.
He could be lying about the electricity too. But assuming
that's true. But it seems like $305 is a very specific small amount if that was we're trying to extort them for money.
Generally, when people ask for limited small amounts, it's because they're limited and small for a reason. So no, I thought it was a steal. I thought he could have went anywhere. I hate the Saints, but I thought the Saints were going to take him. But also said, and you can verify this with my friend, I was like, they're going to take a defensive tackle from Louisville, and that's what they took.
Yep. So, well, no, I feel like at least the thing I can say about Tunsil is at least he didn't drop out of the first round. I would have really felt bad. And if anyone actually did make their decision based on something that happened on his Twitter account 10 minutes before the draft, they deserve everything they get in terms of not drafting a good player because that's idiotic.
If Tunsil would have fell to the Falcons at 17 and they couldn't trade back and they didn't take him, would you be upset?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because I feel like our team's pretty decent at dealing with players that have had a difficult history because Arthur Blank actually cares about the players. I'm not sure that's true in Miami, honestly. I feel like that's kind of a problem because they don't have a great history for that. What do you think about the midriff-bearing shirt, guy? You have to make a noise so the camera will come back to you.
Whoa. Wow. Oh, my. Wow. So, wow. Yeah, we were really confused.
I thought that I didn't see it live, and the first picture I saw of it, I swear to God, I thought it was photoshopped.
No, we saw it. We saw it live, and there was a lot going on around the midriff, even slightly below the waist, where it was kind of a picture for the ladies, if you know what I mean. And yeah, it was a lot going on.
There was a D'Angelo moment.
So here's another player that puzzled me to a degree, and I'm not. And I guess I just want to talk about this pick for a second. I thought the Cowboys would take him because they're the Cowboys.
Yep. Yeah, I knew they would take him.
Yep. This is a Cowboys pick.
Yep.
I thought they should have took the guy who went a pick later to Jacksonville, which was a great pick, the cornerback from Florida State. But this is what puzzled me. They just signed Alfred Morris. McFadden had a decent year. They now have 3 legit running backs and no one on defense to stop anybody. Now, he could be very good, but I don't think he's as good as Todd Gurley. That puzzles me. I don't get it. I just don't.
No, and Mel, it's funny, Mel Kiper was speaking truth right before that pick came down. And for those of y'all that watch this, I watched,
but I couldn't hear it. I was watching NFL Network. So
the thing is that the ESPN guys actually get tipped off as to who the trade is, or who the pick is most of the time, about 20, 30 seconds before the trade actually happens, which is how Berman knew that Bosa was about to get picked. So he could be like, Berman was like, I take Bosa. And, it was annoying. But so the ESPN guys get tipped off. And when Kiper found this out, he went off on picking a running back in the first round, and he just started listing a bunch of statistics. And the one that really caught my eye, and I don't have the actual statistic on the tip of my tongue, but he was talking about how few starting running backs that are currently in the NFL were picked in the first round, which really speaks to the fact that position has changed. And it's that pick had Jerry Jones written all over it. That pick was he's like Emmitt Smith. They even had a quote from Emmitt Smith at the ready because Jerry Jones has made that comparison. And when that pick happened, I thought, God, the only thing that's missing from this draft is Al Davis coming up to pick the Super Bowl MVP, to trade for the Super Bowl MVP. And then Al Davis to pick somebody who was great in the national championship game, but wasn't so good in the rest of it. It was always you can always rely on the Raiders to trade for the Super Bowl MVP and to pick someone who was either the Heisman Trophy winner, who wasn't that good, or someone who had done really well in the national championship game, but didn't have a body of work to suggest they would be a good pro player. If that had happened, we would have had an absolute perfect flashback draft.
I don't get it. Maybe it's me. There's something about him as a player he's very good at a lot of things, but not great, which is something you can say about Emmitt Smith, because Emmitt, and I think would admit this, had one of maybe the greatest offensive line in history that he ran behind for millions of years. And this guy could be very, very good. I don't get it. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Emmitt Smith. I actually loved the Cowboys during that era.
Sure, I like Mike Irvin with you.
But I felt the same way that I did when I was a kid, and I watched the Steelers play. And I was a huge, huge Steelers fan back in the Terry Bradshaw, Lynn Swann era. And so I hero worshipped those guys, particularly Lynn Swann, which turns out to have been a mistake personality-wise. But
wait, who?
The guy that played running back for the Steelers during that era was a guy named Franco Harris. And Franco Harris and Emmitt Smith kind of reminded me of each other in the sense that if you gave them space, they were good runners. But Franco Harris couldn't break tackles. Franco Harris was not a great running back. And when I saw Emmitt Smith, I thought, this is a great guy. He's really smart guy, really good at being a professional running back. But he didn't have to shed blockers. He wasn't that great. If he hadn't had that line, then you wouldn't have seen. He wasn't oh, God, now I'm going to blank on it. The guy from Detroit who was so good, who retired early.
Sanders.
Barry Sanders, yeah. He wasn't a Barry Sanders. You watch Barry Sanders and you were like, this guy's amazing. If he had half a line, it would be incredible. But Emmitt Smith, you just watched and you were like, yeah, he ran through holes really well. He did a good job of getting out of bounds so he wouldn't get hit a bunch so he could extend his career. And occasionally he did great things. But at best what this kid is, and I don't understand drafting running back in the first round when so many teams have proven that you don't need to, especially with the fourth freaking pick in a draft where people wanted to move up. I am mystified.
They said they had a trade, but they were afraid that they weren't going to get. So it was going to be for Baltimore, where Baltimore was going to move up, and Baltimore was going to take someone. I forget who. I don't know, but someone. But they were afraid that they couldn't get the running back at that pick.
Well, this dude better be amazing, and he better have a long career, because that's the other problem.
Sure, he's
All
not
right.
good.
Any other, before we finish things up, any other glaring great picks or poor picks that you want to talk about from the first round?
Actually, I was looking this up because I wanted to see who was picked and where. I was going to look at a draft tracker thing here. Let me see if I can find.
It seems to me from looking at most of the analyses of the draft, there was widespread satisfaction with analysts in terms of most of the picks. Most of them were Bs, most of them were B pluses, B minuses. The pick from San Francisco got universally condemned, and the Dallas pick got some thumbs down or some lower grades from people. Some people didn't like our pick, but our pick was honestly like pretty consistent in terms of people giving us Bs, B minuses, B pluses. So I don't know. It seems like those were the two big stories. The big story. I don't think Tunsil's slide would have been that big of a story had there been other legitimate things going on that were more exciting, and had it not been for the fact that it was Twitter and no one on ESPN understands Twitter.
Sure. So we'll just go through the top 10 real quick. Goff, sure. Wentz, sure. Bosa was the one that I didn't see coming. He reminds me of Patrick Kearney.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent comparison.
Right? Like everyone wants him to be JJ Watt. And I think that people are going to be disappointed if they get Patrick Kearney. And if you go back and look at Patrick Kearney's career, Patrick Kearney was fine, but he was not the third pick in the draft fine.
Right.
We talked about Elliott. I love Jalen Ramsey, and I am not a Florida State fan at all. He's good. That was one of the picks that was wide. Taylor good. Like, he's good.
Yep.
I love that pick. Ronnie Stanley to Baltimore made sense. I love Buckner to San Francisco. They're getting the defense back together. Conklin makes sense to Tennessee. I love Leonard Floyd because I think he's a freak of nature, and in a 3-4 defense makes sense. Eli Apple, I probably would have taken Hargraves, but what else? So there's not a lot of like picks that I thought were. I think Tunsil to Miami is probably my favorite pick. Outside of the Falcons pick, maybe my least favorite pick. My least favorite pick is probably Ezekiel Elliott because he's a running back, and I don't think he's special. I'm willing to say I'm wrong. That one boggles my mind.
Yeah, even if he is special, I have a problem with that pick. But yeah, the one thing that I saw in several different analyses of the draft was that a bunch of people thought Leonard Floyd was drafted too high because they said he just didn't produce numbers at Georgia, and that people are working too much on his physical measurables and not on his play on the field. Any thoughts about that?
What is he? 6 foot? He's 6'6".
The dude is huge.
Runs a 4.6. In a 3-4 defense, he could be unblockable. Look, if there's something that the Bears like, look at it this way. All right, he's 6'6". 33-inch arms, weighs 244. He's faster than the safety we took.
Yeah, and when I hear that frame, I hear someone that hasn't been in an NFL training room yet.
Yep.
They could just going to get bigger and faster.
If you take away the off-the-field issues, what's the guy that played for San Francisco? He also.
I know who you're talking about, yeah.
That guy. Right, I'm sure teams would love to have him, and I think Leonard Floyd could be that guy. Plus, that's a fine pick. That's why anyone would be upset with that is beyond me.
Yeah, I saw that in multiple different analyses that people thought that they were overpicking him at that position, which I thought was weird because I really thought he was one of the most highly rated people going into the draft, and then it seems kind of odd to see this like post first round worry.
Was there any like shocking pick developments.
There were a couple of minor trades. All the shocking stuff happened like a couple days before the draft.
Yeah.
And then nothing shocking happened because the exact same two players we thought would go at the top went at the top. The only other thing I could think of is ESPN at one point last night had a pretty nice graphic of, what all the different times in which quarterbacks were taken 1-2. And it was about half and half where about 50% of the time both quarterbacks were good, and about 50% of the time one of the quarterbacks that was taken was a real disappointment, especially in comparison to the other one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I sort of wonder about this. I don't have enough of a sense of either of these guys to know what's the more likely scenario. But anyway,
yeah.
No, I was going to say I'm about to roast out here. It's really warm, even though it's lovely. So I need to get off the podcast so I can take all my clothes off and go for a swim.
Didn't want to hear that.
Shout out to Nick Sheila.
Cool. So we're back. We may do more of these podcasts, maybe together.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
But we're back. Let us know what you think. Missed on Points on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. We'll have a lot of content. And hey, Dimitrov, fuck you.
If any defense lawyers want to volunteer to defend Eric, if anything should happen, we definitely take any kind of free service we can.
He's a little man.
He is a little bitty man, actually. He is a little bitty man. Anyway, it was good to do this again. We'll see you again soon.
Later.